The Bible is a living word that reads us as we read it. It's a person, a voice that proves that time is not linear. As one sentence can confirm the past, guide the present, and declare the future. You are here. I am here. He is here. We are here right now. In the tomorrow of yesterday and in the yesterday of tomorrow, I thank you for joining today. So we're back. Thank you so much for joining once again. In our last episode, we spoke about David and his best friend, Jonathan. Jonathan was the son of Saul. He was the crown prince, but he also was someone who had faith in God, and he recognized something in David that caused him to do something very interesting. Jonathan, in the presence of David, took off his robe, he took off his tunic, his sword, his belt. He gifted them to David. They entered into a pact with one another, with God as their witness. They had a covenant friendship, not a romantic one. Please don't miss that. But Jonathan honored and he respected the faith that David operated in, to the point where he was willing to give up the throne, not even fight for it, because he recognized that it rightfully belonged to David. We introduced some of the ways that their friendship unfolded. Jonathan was David's refuge, a safe space for him, because Saul, in his jealousy, made several attempts on David's life, and David ended up having to run for his life because it was very apparent and very clear that Saul was out to get him. One day, David met up with Jonathan and just straight up asked him, "What is my offense, bro? What is my crime? What did I do?" Jonathan assured David that no harm would meet him. Essentially, he told him, "Not on my watch, bro. I'll figure it out. I'll find out what moves he's really trying to make, and I'll let you know." David and Jonathan came up with a plan, and this plan would really help to kind of unpack how Saul really felt about David. It was the New Moon Festival, and this was a festival that David had been celebrating with King Saul. However, due to the circumstances, David decided he was going to sit this one out. So David didn't show up. The first night of the festival, it didn't really get Saul's attention. But by the second night, when he looked over and saw that David wasn't there, he asked Jonathan, "Yo, where's David?" Jonathan lied and told his pops that David asked for permission to go back home and to offer a family sacrifice with his people. Saul was infuriated. Saul knew that Jonathan was trying to pull the wool over his eyes, and after mildly calling him out of his name and talking a little bit about his mama, Saul took his spear and hurled it at Jonathan, trying to take his own son out. Now, I don't know who keeps giving this man a spear, but once again, he uses his spear and tries to take his own son out. It was at that moment that Jonathan had no question whatsoever whether or not Saul really wanted to off David. Because surely, if he's ready to off Jonathan just for defending David, he's ready to off David. Jonathan was livid. He left the table. He didn't eat. I imagine his nervous system was just shot all night. And he just tossed and turned throughout the night trying to process everything. Like, what is going on? What is happening? The next morning, Jonathan met up with David. In tears, they both had to do something very challenging. They had to say goodbye and they had to part ways because it was no longer safe for David to be around. David was officially on the run. The first place he went to was the town of Nob. It was a town that was where the priest lived. When he made it to the town of Nob, David spoke to Ahimelech, the priest. He asked him for food and he asked him for weapons. And David wasn't 100% forthright with Ahimelech. He didn't want to tell him he was on the run. Ahimelech thought that David was preparing to go on an assignment that the king sent him on, and David did not argue with that thought. David did not correct him. He just went along with it. And he's like, "Yeah, it was urgent, so I forgot my weapons. I need some food." Ahimelech gave David some of the holy bread that was in the tent of meeting or in the tabernacle. And when David asked him for a weapon, Ahimelech told him, "I don't do that here. We don't have an arsenal of weapons. The only thing I have is the sword of Goliath that you took when you defeated him." David said, "That'll do." He took the sword of Goliath, and while David was in Nob meeting with Ahimelech, Saul's chief herdsman happened to also be in Nob, and he saw David there. We will later find out that he is a snitch and that this is going to be a problem that ends in a great tragedy. But David took his bread, he took his sword, and from the town of Nob, he escaped to a place that was highly unlikely for Saul to seek him out. He went to the town of Gath. That's right. The very town that Goliath was from, David escaped to. And when he was before King Achish of Gath, King Achish's officers were like, "Oh, no, hold up. I don't feel good about this at all." They knew David's reputation. They like, "Yo, this the one they be singing about. He the one that got the 10,000s. I don't know. I don't know about him." When David heard the comments that these dudes were making, he just instantly came up with a case of temporary insanity. He started drooling in his beard. He started scratching on things. He wanted them to believe that he was a madman so they wouldn't think he was a threat. King Achish is like, "Yo, come on now. You bringing me a madman? You don't think I got enough madmen around here to deal with?" So that gave David an opportunity to once again get away. He ran to a cave in Adullam and hid there. And after some time, his brothers, his parents, all of his kinfolk ended up meeting him at the cave in Adullam, and they stayed there with him. As word got out, about 400 men that were also on the run, they were in trouble or they were in debt. They also went to the cave in Adullam. David ended up being their captain. He was their leader. In time, David realized, man, I got to make sure my people are good. So he took his parents to Mizpah and Moab, and he spoke to the king. He's like, "Listen, I don't really know what's going on right now. I don't know what the Lord is about to do, but please just let my parents stay here for a little while until things settle, until I know what the Lord is really going to do with my life." The king of Moab was agreeable. So David's parents stayed in Moab for a while. David returned to Judah. When Saul heard about his return, he was just sitting under a tree holding a spear. Now, they need to do better. But he's sitting under a tree holding a spear, and he has all of his officers surrounding him. And then those intrusive thoughts get to him again, and he just goes off. He's like, "Has that man promised all of you riches or fame? What's really going on? How is it that you all have conspired against me? Not one of you thought to tell me that my own son made a pact with this dude and encouraged him to kill me?" Nowhere does it say that Jonathan encouraged David to off his father. But according to Saul's intrusive thoughts, that's what happened. So he's upset with his officers, like, "Nobody? All of you are against me? You all conspiring against me? Not now one of you really even care about me, huh?" I could picture these dudes around him like, "Oh my gosh, this not gonna be good. This not gonna be good." And then, before Saul got too rattled and decided to pin any one of them with his spear, Doeg spoke up. And when he spoke up, he shifted the focus away from them. And he said, "You know what? I meant to tell you, my bad. I forgot. I actually saw David in Nob talking to Ahimelech the other day." Ahimelech gave him a bite to eat. He gave him Goliath's sword. He even consulted the Lord for him. Now, why Doeg have to go do that? Because right away Saul said, "Bring them here. Matter of fact, bring all of them here." So Ahimelech and all of the priests that were in Nob stood before Saul. Saul went off on Ahimelech. "Why did you help that traitor? You fed him and you encouraged him to take me out?" Ahimelech is like, "What? I don't have a clue what you're talking about. We talk about David? Name me one person who's been more faithful to you than David. Bro, that's your son-in-law. What do you mean? This is not new. This is not the first time that I've consulted the Lord on his behalf. I didn't know that he was on the run. I thought he was on assignment with you. It's been countless times I've consulted the Lord on his behalf. You never had a problem with it before. There was nothing about it this time that raised a flag for me. I didn't know." Saul wasn't trying to hear all that. He turned to his men and he said, "Take them all out. Wipe them all out." His men were like, "Listen, no, I'm good. No, no, sir. No, sir. See, one thing I'm really not interested in doing is messing with the Lord's priest. That's a no for me, sir. Nope. I know you might punish me, smack me. I'd rather you pierce me with your spear than for me to have to deal with the wrath of the Lord. All of Saul's men refused to raise their hand against the Lord's priest. Doeg, however, who was an Edomite, he was not an Israelite. He was an Edomite. He was a descendant of Esau, not a descendant of Jacob. So Doeg had no issue. He had no issue whatsoever about taking them out. Saul ordered Doeg to wipe them out. Doeg offed all of the priests. Then he went to the town of Nob and he offed their wives, the children, the livestock, everything. Only Abiathar, which is Ahimelech's son, was able to escape. And when he escaped, he ran to David. David was deeply apologetic for being at fault for his pop's death, and he promised Abiathar, he's like, yo, man, I'm so sorry. I knew that no good could come from the fact that Doeg saw me there. I am so sorry, man. Just stay with me, man. I will make sure you are good. I will take care of you. So Abiathar stuck by David's side. Meanwhile, David went out, he fought some Philistines who were stealing some grain, and then Saul mobilized his army trying to trap David and his men. But David, with some assistance from Abiathar, sought direction from the Lord, and he escaped before Saul could even get there. Next thing you know, he went to this place called Ziph and settled there for a little while. Saul made it his mission to hunt David down, but the Lord wouldn't let Saul actually find him. Word got to Saul that David was in this place called Ziph, but before Saul could get there, Jonathan beat him there. Jonathan found his friend David and he encouraged him. He reminded him of something that I imagine became more and more of a distant reality for David. Jonathan said, bro, you are going to be the king of Israel, and I'm going to stand with you on that. They renewed their solemn pact, and then they parted ways. I know that that was such a refresher for David to hear his friend just meet him where he was and remind him, we're not all out to get you. And no matter how scary it is, no matter how bad it looks, no matter how much he comes for you, you will be what the Lord said you will be. His promises will come true. You will be what the Lord says that you are. No matter what opposition that you face, you are going to stand in the reality of what God called you to be. I just love that. I love their friendship. After Jonathan encouraged his friend, he had to get out of Dodge himself. The men of Ziph actually caught up with Saul and told him exactly where David was, where he was hiding out. Saul welcomed that news. He's like, finally, someone has my back. Now just go make sure he's still there, because this man, he be moving around. They went back just to make sure he was still there. Nope, David had moved on. The more that David ran, the more fixated that Saul was on finding him. One day, they both found themselves in the wilderness of Maon. They happened to be on opposite sides of the same mountain. And as Saul was closing in on David, an urgent message alerted Saul that the Philistines were raiding Israel again. Saul had been so busy trying to get back what he had lost. He almost lost what he had left. He had to go back. He had to fight the Philistines. And while he was out fighting the Philistines, David escaped and went to live in the strongholds of En-Gedi. I want to encourage you the same way that Jonathan encouraged David. I don't know what your purpose is. I don't know the call on your life. I don't know what God promised you. I don't know what you're waiting on. I don't know what you're waiting for. I don't know what that thing is that may seem like it is so distant or like it may never come true just because of all of the opposition and adversity that you're facing. I want to encourage you in this. The Lord watches over his word to fulfill it. And if he said it, it will come to pass. There's something that is developing in the waiting. There's something that is strengthening in the fighting. There's something that is growing as you are pressing in. And so don't give up. Don't give up. And don't think that you misheard it when the Lord spoke it over you just because you haven't seen it yet. David was anointed by Samuel a while back, and he still hasn't taken the throne, but it doesn't make the anointing any less significant. It doesn't make the calling on his life any less real. And in the same way, whatever it is that the Lord promised you, whatever it is that He spoke over you, and no matter how long that it's been, just because you haven't seen it yet doesn't mean that He didn't say it and doesn't mean that He will not see it come to pass. Let that be an encouragement to you. Thank you so much for tuning in and allowing me to share in this time with you. If you haven't already, please like, share, subscribe, comment. I'd love to hear from you. I look forward to our next episode if the Lord blesses me to record another one. But until then, bye for now.